Welcome to Off the Court, a show dedicated to making you the best version of yourself as a player and as a person. I'm Coach Jack, owner of Close the Gate Hoops, the #1 basketball training company in the state of Wisconsin. If you're trying to take your life and game to the next level, this is the podcast for you. Let's get it.
Welcome back to the Wednesday edition of the program. In the studio with me, I am honored to have Jack Hummel, son of the late Tony Hummel. Jack, I think the last time I saw you, I think your dad probably had you around the radio station one afternoon or something. Or,
I remember.
So yeah, I mean, it's been some time. And Lori, also here in the studio with us. Good morning to you.
Hi, Jack.
You are Jack's aunt, right?
Proud godmother.
Proud godmother, and you just kind of keep tabs on him as best you can.
Oh, it's tough. But...
Well, Jack, it's good to have you here. Tony did so many things, as I said, just
Yep.
In my knowledge, and that was just my knowledge of his orbit around here in WCLO's area when he was working for us. But he every day was hey, what about, and could we do, and what do you think about, and I mean, his brain was just charged with stuff to do, and he couldn't help himself but to do as many of those things as he could. And I just think that what was so wonderful about Tony was that every one of those ideas had nothing to do with
himself.
How can I bring myself into some big glorified role or something. It was how can I help the community? How can I help kids? How can I help families? And that's what he started with Close the Gate.
Yep.
Which was a basketball
basketball training
company that had coaching and all kinds of stuff.
Yep.
And that's really what he tried to do with, and for the life of me, Local Vision. Thank you. The Local Vision thing, which again I totally believe was just before its time. Tony was a visionary. If he were here and started that company today, I think it would go like gangbusters.
That was right around the recession.
Yeah.
So not good timing.
So just a lot of good stuff. And much like people might expect, sometimes sons walk pretty closely in father's footsteps. And in this case, Jack, it appears you are. You've taken up the Close the Gates thing. And we've also, in that time since we lost Tony, created a foundation.
Yes.
In his name.
Yep. So I just recently created a foundation called the Tony Hummel Foundation. But mental health was definitely something that was a value to my father. It's something he struggled with all throughout his life. And me personally, I do as well. But I created the foundation to try and get rid of the stigma behind mental health, it being looked down upon. But what it does is all proceeds will go towards fundraising for kids to have free therapy and free education on mental health and try and get a better idea if they can't afford it. But kind of why I was super excited to come on the radio is just try and spread awareness for people if they want to get involved. I mean, we already have like 7 or 8 board members, but trying to find people and therapists too that are willing to donate their time as well, because what the proceeds will go to is to pay therapists to get free education and hopefully free speaking events, but also their time. So like if they charge $75 an hour for a therapy session, maybe we could pay them $35 and then they donate $35 of their time, something like that. But it's small stepping stones. We have big grand visions, but right now it's basically spreading awareness to try and build more funds and, hopefully give kids that don't have the opportunity right now to understand more about mental health and just understand that it's a normal thing that all of us struggle through, and it's not something to resist or avoid. It's something you should, let flow and be a part of you and embrace it.
I think that's admirable, and we're learning right now, nationally, statewide, whatever, that since the pandemic, the national or mental health has become a bigger and bigger issue for a lot of reasons. Maybe it's because kids were cooped up with nothing but video games and cell phones for a year and a half or whatever it was. But we've always had issues here, and in their worst case scenarios, they can result in horrific things, teen suicides and all of that. And I do think that the attempt to normalize it, if you will, is a good thing.
Yes.
It's, everybody has a down day, and that doesn't mean that you need to see a therapist.
Yep.
But when you start having thoughts that, at least initially you go, I don't even know how that came into my head. It might be good to just unload that on somebody.
Yes.
And I think a lot of times it's harder for people that maybe have a few less friends and a few less folks that they might be conversing with, and they try to deal with it themselves. And there is not a lot of access. And I know parents might even be a little bit slow to act on something like that if they sense it, because a lot of times that stuff is not covered in insurance.
Correct.
Yes.
And that presents an issue for families that might be, skating on the edge there as it relates to their finances. It is not an inexpensive thing to go talk to a therapist for an hour usually. So this effort to bring it out and make it accessible is fantastic. The foundation itself has a website.
Yep. So TonyHummelFoundation.org. Right now, in terms of raising funds, we just created T-shirts, right? That we call it #LiveLikeTony. So once they buy the merch, they try and post it on social media, spread awareness of the foundation. But that right now is all we have for proceeds. And then of course, donations or anyone willing to give big donations will go towards the things I talked about earlier in terms of getting free therapy and education. But
the shirts are cool looking shirts. You got nice color.
Wearing one right now.
Picking that, and you Tony Hummel, HUML, TonyHummelFoundation.org. They're right there front and center on the homepage, and you can check out that. So at this point, mental health is a big focus of that, and you also say thyroid cancer.
Yeah. So in terms of the colors of the foundation, so one, it incorporated all the Close the Gate companies I created. And then the second is the thyroid ribbon. So the color of the thyroid ribbon, and mental health is also in that, the green and the, I believe, is it purple? That was the thyroid. Okay. So that's why we added the green and the purple, and then we put it into other Close the Gate companies. But that's kind of where we got the idea in terms of the logo. And then on the back of the shirt, my dad always had a bunch of life speeches, right? So one of the last speeches he gave to my family was to focus on the 4 F's, which is faith, family, friends, freedom. And that's kind of where we got the back of the shirt, is to focus on those core values throughout your life. And if you focus on those things, you're going to live a pretty happy life.
Yeah. All right. Well, that is awesome.
And you may know that Tony did die of thyroid cancer.
Yes.
So that was part of where Jack was going with, because if someone loses someone to cancer, someone has gets their own diagnosis, or someone close to them gets a diagnosis, that can, lead to some struggles with mental health.
Oh, indeed. I can only imagine, the grief people go through when you hit that diagnosis. And again, your dad faced that as bravely as anyone I think ever could have. I mean, he still came to work for years after that diagnosis, and then again felt the need that maybe the clock was a little shorter, and he wanted to branch out and start some of these other things that he was dreaming about, and Close the Gates was one of them.
Yeah.
So I think that's fantastic, and you've picked this up now. How old are you now, Jay?
I'm 21.
21, okay.
Yep.
And now I'm going to ask him about Close the Gate, which, as we said, was a basketball training company, basically.
Yep.
At the time. What is it now?
Okay, so it's kind of complicated. So there's CTG. It's how I think of it as kind of like Amazon. Amazon has these branches where like Audible is a subsidiary. They have their AWS stats thing. So you have CTG, and so there's Hoops, which is basketball training. And while I was basketball training, I found this love for kind of teaching the life lessons of basketball training, which is what my father loved to do too. So I thought of the idea to niche down. So I have what's called CTG Mindset, and these all have websites. So there's CTG Hoops, CTG Mindset, which is sports psychology. Then you have CTG Growth, which is more towards life coaching, because I wanted to be able to touch people that don't just play basketball or sports. And then you have CTG Nutrition, which is based on that sports and nutrition realm. But that's kind of where we're at right now. CTG Hoops is definitely our biggest one. I kind of just created those branches in the last 3 months. But like our summer camp, we're located in 2 cities, so Janesville and La Crosse, Wisconsin now. And our summer camp had probably over 250 kids total. But we probably trained in the last 2-3 years over 500 people. Different people.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's going pretty good.
Growing leaps and bounds.
Yeah.
And that is a fantastic legacy. The basketball part of it itself.
Yes.
Was we talked about it with your dad, And people said, "Oh, I didn't even know that was a thing." And how can I get involved? And we might want to review that just from a standpoint of people have a great interest in basketball around these parts, and there's all kinds of opportunity, but it is sometimes a little daunting. And we've had Janesville Youth Football, where you could kind of get started outside of the teams in the schools. And we've had Janesville Youth Hockey, and we've had American Legion Baseball. There's these outside things. Basketball was always a little harder until Tony came up with this.
Yeah, it definitely made it a lot easier. But I think the reason it's been able to grow so much is because parents see so much value in what we teach them beyond basketball, because everyone, the ball's going to stop bouncing at the end of the day, whether it's at 18 years old or you play professionally until you're 30, right? It's going to stop at some point, and you got to learn how to live your life without basketball, which is why I think parents just eat up all that value we give them in terms of things outside of it. And I think my dad, I thought I came up with this idea, but I went back and read our old texts, and he came up with this idea. But I created the basketball training notebook, it's called. But it basically gives them a blueprint on how to analyze themselves, not only as a basketball player, but how to push themselves towards their life and to find growth on things outside of just basketball. But I think that's been one of our biggest things. In speaking events, like today I have 2 Catholic school speeches, one at St. Mary's and one at St. John's. But talking about things outside of just sports and success and learning how to live your life, I think, is what parents love. And that's kind of why it's been able to spread so much.
Well, you obviously identify with a generation that I don't identify with as much. And the challenges for that generation, I mean, every generation has had their own. But it's getting harder for a lot of us older folks to identify with the challenges in the younger generations. Now, what are some of the things that you put forth? Do some of the old tried and true, treat others as you want yourself treated, all that kind of, does that still hold true, or are we morphing a little bit?
Okay, so I'm going to get pretty philosophical here.
Okay.
So this is in my speech today, but being water is something that I've kind of approached my life. Bruce Lee is known for coming up with this statement, but it's not resisting extremes. So like when we have the extremes, there's adversity and extreme, and then the opposite of that is growth, right? When we have failure, when we have adversity, that's how we learn from things. So when we resist adversity, that also resists our growth. Same approach with happiness and sadness, okay? So when we resist our sadness, like when we get sad and we say, what's wrong with us, things like that, instead if we embrace it, then we're going to be happier in the process. Which is what I think so many of us do. We overestimate the feelings of others. We think everybody's got it figured out, when in reality, nobody's got it figured out. We're always thinking the grass is greener on the other side. So that's kind of definitely where I got the foundation aspect, is just letting people know everyone's going through something. Everyone's got a problem with something. And just to let people know that, we're all equal. People aren't living better lives than we are, even though we always think that there's something wrong with us. But that's kind of where I got the concept of, that's the biggest struggle for me personally, is just trying to resist those feelings and thinking that something's wrong with me, when in reality, everyone goes through it, even as much as we want to think that they don't.
Yeah. Well, and that's, I think that's one of the best lessons that needs to be taught, not just to your generation, but everybody out there right now, is, it is not all about me. Yep. And I think that's one of the things about basketball. You talk about teams, and a football team, but it's big.
Yes, very big.
A basketball team on the floor is 5 people. And so each has their own specialty and their own function that is unique to them. But the whole thing falls apart if one of them is missing.
Yes.
And it's a real simplistic way of looking kind of at how we should treat larger groups of people, I think. So I think that's what's great about Close the Gate, is it kind of said, well, wait a minute, this, basketball is a microcosm of kind of how, if we functioned in society like that, we'd do much better.
For sure. Absolutely. For sure. There's so many things you can learn through sports.
So that is a very, very cool and ambitious way now, with effectively 4 companies and a foundation.
Yes.
At age 21. So the next Elon Musk might be sitting right here. I don't know, but it's just like your dad. You just throwing that stuff out there. It's just coming to you. Obviously, I can tell, and you're enthusiastic about it. Put people in touch with you in the ways that they can. Obviously, we have TonyHummelFoundation.org.
Yep. So CTGHoops.com. So you'll find this in all of our websites. So if you go to ctghoops.com, there's a tab on the website called CTG Plus, and that links to all our other websites. Okay. But in terms of the branches of CTG, it would be, say, ctgmindset.ctghoops.com, because it's a branch of CTG, so we can't create, separate websites based off that, if that makes sense. But if you just click on CTG Plus, you get all the links to all the websites, basically.
Awesome. And are they effectively separate, or are they all interlinked? Like, if you're interested in the mental health service part of it more than the other stuff, can you just kind of slide in there?
Yeah. So it's like it's a completely different website for that branch. Just the URL basically is connected to CTG Hoops, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense. So are we talking a lot of volunteers, it would seem, here to kind of staff this up, or do you have paid employees yet, or what?
So we have like 8 board members. I mean, we've already had a few conversations with therapists that are willing to start doing the donate their time and also pay them to do it. But basically just spreading awareness, and we know we had to start small somewhere, but just trying to grow to a point where when we do have people that are, really enthusiastic about this cause, that they're willing to donate more money, and that's when we can start kind of doing like big events with speakers, like known names, and of course reach out to them, and maybe they'll be willing to donate their time for a certain sum. But getting events is kind of my vision, like the speaking events I have, but someone that's much more well-known in the mental health space.
Well, that might be you in a couple of years.
Yeah, I think so. It's hard to keep up with.
Yeah, don't sell yourself short. That's how everyone, those guys got started somewhere, is doing little local speeches, and then people are impressed, as I'm guessing some of the listeners are right now, and they say, I got to have him over here, and pretty soon...
Absolutely.
Pretty soon, you're the next Jason Jennings or these gurus that have come into being over the years. So,
and Tim, I think as well known as my brother Tony Hummel was in this community, I don't think most people knew that he had some debilitating bouts with mental illness, and we want to make sure that people know that you can live a completely normal and wonderful life if you can access some of these, therapists or just even to have somebody to lean on
and help you accept. I think, Lori, that okay, this is you, and there's going to be 3 days where you aren't going to be very productive, and you need to accept that and make it part of you. And that's what Tony did.
Absolutely.
I never saw the guy in a condition that would suggest to you that he had those bouts.
Exactly.
And again, that's because Tony was never about Tony. So I don't want people talking about that. But I think a lot of us, as you said, Jack, we get there and we go, I'm just screwed up, and we may not talk to anybody about it, and we might not seek help, and that generally leads to it becoming debilitating if people don't do something about it.
And how great would it be if we get to the point where we can talk about mental illness like we do cancer and diabetes and Alzheimer's. Let's get that word out there and get folks the help they need, because it is starting younger and younger. Where kids are,
and I think that somewhere we need a new term probably, because it's been called mental illness, and it's
there's that stigma attached.
There is, and it means you're crazy, and it's like, no, it doesn't mean that.
Exactly.
But it may be even a little broader than cancer or whatever, because it's kind of how you're wired.
Right.
It's not like something necessarily that you can cure. You might be able to manage the symptoms and manage it better with some help, but I guess like cancer, there is no cure yet. So you got to learn how to incorporate it into life and not let it just blow up your entire being.
And I think, like you were saying, Lori, my dad's a perfect example. Everyone would call him the most famous, non-famous person they ever met. So you look at this person that's super successful in terms of their community, and you think his life is great, when in reality he was struggling with all these things. So it goes back to that overestimation of people. That's exactly why I think the foundation in his name is a great example, is that we're all going through something.
Indeed. Well, it is fantastic effort. I was very I'm losing my word here for that, but it just gave me a good, warm feeling to see what you'd been doing when I finally got the link and thought, oh, look at what Jack is up to here. And knew I had to have you in and talk about this a little bit. And so, folks, it's Tony Hummel is Huml. That's the only tricky part that you might have. TonyHummelFoundation.org or CTGHoops.com.
Yep.
One of those two will get you in touch with this and learn more about it. It's a great effort. And Jack, just like your dad, appreciate everything that you do, and good luck with it.
I appreciate you.
Gangbusters.
Thank you so much for having me on, and my aunt. We truly appreciate the opportunity to talk.
Good to see you.
Thank you so much.
All right, we'll be right back on your talk show on WCLO.
Thank you so much, Gatekeepers, for listening to this new episode of Off the Court. If you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts, please leave us a review. If we've helped you out in any way, this will do so much for CTG to continue to change more lives. Remember, our mission is to influence as many lives as possible. Another pro to leaving reviews on Apple Music is that you can also be submitted for free shoe giveaways, along with getting shout outs on our podcast page or social media following that has over 15,000 listeners and over 150,000 followers. So take advantage of leaving a review that takes you less than 30 seconds. If you're a coach, parent, or athlete wanting to learn more about how to build basketball training workouts, look no further. If you go onto our website, wait 7 seconds, there's going to be a pop-up that shows you a free ebook download, and it will show you exactly how to build your own basketball training workouts to give you the greatest potential to be the best player that you can be, or the parent of your child, or the coach of your child. Once you go to our website at ctghoops.com, just wait that 7 seconds for that ebook to pop up, and then all you're going to have to do is type in your email, and you'll get a completely free ebook of 20 pages on how to build your own basketball training workouts. Make sure you follow us on all our social media pages at CTG Hoops. The sum of all our branches and podcasts has over 150,000 followers and over 15,000 listeners. Don't forget, we're also famous for selling the basketball training notebook on our website, specifically designed to give basketball players a blueprint on how to improve themselves. Make sure you check out all other CTG branches, including CTG Mindset, which is sports psychology driven, CTG Growth, which is more towards life coaching, so it reaches people other than just athletes, and CTG Nutrition, which focuses on sports nutrition, how to fuel our body to give the best results. So we have CTG Hoops, Mindset, Growth, and Nutrition. Make sure you go check out all the websites, social media platforms, and podcasts that these branches offer if you're looking to become the best version of yourself. All of these links are in the description below. Never hesitate to reach out to me, Coach Jack. I'm always going to be here for any type of questions that you guys may have. Thank you.